Welcome to this week is GMA Talk, Global Advocacy, Global Mission Advocacy, where we really educate and inform people about the issues in the community and what is happening around the world. And today we are really honored and happy to welcome a very special guest who works with an organization helping children in terms of after-school programs and sports. And you're going to hear from him more about the organization and his work personally. Welcome to GMA Talk, Tim.
Thank you. Feels like it's long in the waiting.
Thank you. Really great to have you and just to talk about the work you do in the community for all children and also migrant and refugee children. Maybe we can just start. What is your name and what's the organization you work for and your specific role in the organization?
Yeah, so my name is Tim Adams and I'm the founder and executive director of a program called Free Play. It used to be called Free Footy, and it started about 13 years ago. Footy, if you're from North America, is soccer. If you're from everywhere else in the world, you understand what that word means. But we started as an organization really trying to provide after-school soccer for kids. And really, for me, it wasn't about the soccer, the actual scoring goals and winning games. It was just about the social inclusion that can come from kicking a ball together. Started really small, and we can get into the weeds of how it started because it's quite the story. But started really small with one school playing, and me getting about 75% of that school playing somehow, and that turned into a couple more schools playing in a little league, and that turned into a bigger league, and a bigger league, and a bigger league, and all of a sudden there's 120 teams. And then that kind of turned to looking at, well, we're in Edmonton where 7 months of the year it's freezing cold. And what else can we do? And we should be providing indoor opportunities. So that turned to indoor soccer too. And then that turned to basketball and floor hockey and flag football. And so that's where the name change came from, partly is because we started doing all these other sports as well. Again, for the reason to create social inclusion and to build a sense of community through sport. And the name Free Footy didn't really apply to everything we were doing anymore. So we wanted to turn it to Free Play. And it's kind of a double entendre in a way, I guess, because the word free is supposed to imply that it's free. It's free for all the kids to participate who kind of meet a social vulnerability index. And then it's also supposed to just free play, free it up again, because so much of play has become so political and mired in, trying to be a professional athlete, and everyone's catering to the 1% of people in the world who might make it as 0.1% of people rather than the 99.9% of people who just want to play because they want to be with their friends and have some fun. And so we wanted to free play again, make sure that we have this concept of play is a place where you come and be yourself and you get to make a friend and you get to be part of a community. And for me, it's always been about really that friendship connection is are sort of one of our main measures of success beyond creating a safe space where you feel comfortable to come and feel like you can be yourself, but is we're creating an environment where you can make a best friend. And that's like everything for me, is because if you can create a space where kids can make best friends, that best friend, for me anyways, when I was a kid, the kids that I played soccer with are the people that I still talk to today when I want to celebrate a great day, or I want to commiserate a bad day, or I'm going through a really rough time and I need them to prop me up for a couple of years in a row. As an adult. And so having that realization later in life of just how much value there is to creating those connections as a kid that are healthy, positive, people that you can lean on, because I was blessed of being in a family where I had that support, but I still needed additional support. So I couldn't imagine when I started this thing of how would you get through those times if you didn't have that family support? If you're from a single parent family and mom is working 2 or 3 jobs to keep it going, or potentially live in a group home, or you've come to this country as a newcomer and there's just so many other things to learn about adjusting to a new home, that this isn't top of mind. So
For
yeah,
sure.
it really just became, how do we create this space where everyone feels like they're free to play
Mm-hmm.
and free to belong and free to make a friend.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much in terms of for sharing like the foundation and the beginning of the organization really. So then would you say in terms of the inspirations of launching and founding the organization was mainly trying to, get young children into sport or part of belonging or being included in society, as you say, in terms of like different variables of support?
It was mainly just to be part of a community, to find somewhere where you belong.
Mm-hmm.
I think we undervalue that sense of belonging, of how important it is to feel like you belong somewhere for your identity,
Mm-hmm.
and for your ability to keep stepping forward, even when times are hard. If you feel like you have a place where you fit, it's a lot easier to take steps forward, or even to take a few steps backwards and more and further backwards, and then get back up again and go again. If you feel like there's a group of people around you where you belong and fit in, and you're working for some form of common purpose. So for me, the sport thing is, I could honestly care less. I really don't care. I don't watch sports. I like
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. Um, but I care about it as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Always cared about it as a tool, and I just can't think of very many other activities that you can do that's focused, where you can create that kind of community and sense of belonging, and create a very clear leadership pathway to learn how to lead and to learn how to listen to someone who's leading. They're outside of, being in a band or being on stage in a drama group. um, Sport is really the only place I can personally think of where you can deliver something very focused on terms of belonging, friendships, inclusion, and leadership, and then also being a team player. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I hate that phrase too, just because like team player automatically associates again with sport. But as you become an adult, we all know how important it is to be able to work as a group, and to be in a workplace even, and be able to cooperate with everyone else and give and take on things, and not be the tyrant in the workplace, and be able to get along. And so there's so many values to it that we just don't think about. And for
Mm-hmm.
us, like, we actually write our practice plans where that's all at the top. The sports stuff is at the bottom.
Wow.
So we have a social emotional health learning every
Mm-hmm.
single week, and we have a curriculum that we work with a great masters of education who, is with one of our partner schools, and she's a brilliant mind, and she helped us pull the research to create a great social emotional health learning curriculum that we implement in our practice plans. And that is the focus of the practice. And they're very simple. Like the first one is, as simple as, how do you make an introduction to someone?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a skill that's so important in life, but we don't talk about. And I would guess anybody watching this has never actually been taught, how do you make an introduction to someone? What are the skills you need to
Yeah.
do to make an
Mm-hmm.
introduction?
Yeah, that's so
How many
true.
times in life you do that
Yeah.
daily? I think I probably do it, I don't know, like, especially when I was in my journalism life. I used to work at CBC for 15
Yeah.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I probably did it 30 times a day, of having to
Wow.
introduce myself to someone and listen, and how do you make that interaction, and just how
Mm-hmm.
valuable a skill that is, but we don't talk about it. And from a sport perspective, why that's so valuable, and how you can lace it into sport, but introducing
Yeah.
yourself to, introducing yourself to coach,
Okay.
yourself to ref,
Mm-hmm.
but then the value of that in the community of, okay, take that to school, introducing yourself to someone at school,
Mm-hmm.
introducing yourself to one of your friend's parents. If you need a ride somewhere, how to introduce yourself to someone, say, hi, my name is, what's your
Mm-hmm.
name? You can explain who you are. So very
Mm-hmm.
simple skills that we just try to pick up on, that we can really springboard,
Mm-hmm.
through a platform, which is sport.
Wow, that's really very great, and thank you for sharing in terms of those bits and pieces in terms of getting going and introduction and just like the whole purpose of the organization.
Mhm.
And it's more than a sport for sure, and just try to ensure like the well-being of the people and the children in general. So then, when you think of that, then beside the challenges of the establishing or the challenges of the introduction or getting along with other children,
Mhm.
what are overall like maybe cost or transportation or other like barriers which are hindering people in terms of being part of the organization? Uh,
Uh, yeah, the barriers are so many. It's
mm,
almost hard to list how many barriers there are for kids to participate in things, and it's just getting worse.
wow.
Um, COVID has made things really, really challenging,
Mm-hmm.
especially for people who don't have conventional access already.
Yep.
Um, One of the things that why we do what we do, which is we pick up the kids from school, bring them to the venue to do the practice, have the games, and then we drive them back to their school to walk home from there. One of the main reasons we do that is one, because the transportation piece is huge. We often forget that actually the single biggest barrier to participating in anything is actually transportation, because it doesn't do you a lot of good if you have, a free registration for something and you have a bag of equipment and you can't get from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched so many kids try it via the transportation system of taking a bus and another bus and another bus and another bus, and it's 2 hours of buses to get to the venue.
Wow.
And how many times can you really do that, or ask a 10-year-old to do that? Quite frankly, it's just not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So transportation piece is a huge part of it, of getting kids from A to B. um, the other barriers that come from it are, quite frankly, a lot of the time language, in making sure that it's so hard to register if you can't speak the primary language, um, of whatever, wherever you are. Frankly,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have those basic language skills and literacy skills, how hard that can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So those two are big barriers. Cost is obviously a barrier that everyone associates with, that the costs of sport and things just keep rising, and they continue to rise
Yep.
with
Mm-hmm.
COVID, because now facilities are charging a premium, an extra premium on top of their regular fees for sanitation and cleaning, which I understand they have to do, but then that just passes on to the consumer, right?
For sure.
So the barriers are huge, and I'm just skimming the surface of like
For
big
sure.
ones that
Mm-hmm.
people would recognize. But then you can go into all the other barriers that exist for a child to feel included, to want to participate in something, and to create a space where you don't have to be. There's such an association with sport, which is why we're trying to move away to this play. There's such this association that sport is where you go and you do like uh, really physically exerting things, and you're going to be pushed to your limits and all this stuff. It's like, grief, just get over
Yeah.
that. That's like, again, 1% of the population. It's not what we're doing. So
Okay.
that's the branding of society that we create around sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so getting through that
Yeah.
barrier to make sure that people know it's not that. Like,
Yeah.
it's a place for your kids to come and
Yeah.
belong and be part of
Mm-hmm.
this. And there are many
Because
other cultural
yeah.
barriers that apply too, right?
Yeah, that's very interesting because when you talk in terms of like the perception overall, yeah, people have of different kind of sports and what goes on. But then for you specifically, when you talk about that, because I understand part of the mission of the organization is to create that inclusive
Yes.
environment for children, like to be free and play and make friends and network with each other. And then, so how is that aspect of when you say it's more than a sport or it's not just about sport, how is that other aspect of inclusiveness is achieved within your organization?
It starts really with like being focused on who we want in the organization. So we use something called the social vulnerability index to help us determine the areas where the highest need is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the past, up until COVID, and we still do, but we really partnered intentionally with the schools that really needed our support in those neighborhoods where we knew there was the highest barriers to participation. Why I say in the past is just because with COVID, there's a lot of other challenges with the school environment, and the schools trying to make sure that their schools stay safe. And so they can't be the same sort of conduit as they used to
Mm-hmm.
be for us. So we're operating a little bit more independently this year until things calm down. Um, so that starts the process of being inclusive right from the beginning, of making sure that you're going to the areas that need you the most and applying as much support there as humanly possible. I think that's the starting point. I would say a second big piece to it is, again, it's that transportation piece and making sure that people can get there and anyone can get there. And then the third, when you get to the facility, is the way in which the programming unfolds, of it being really focused on the child and not the sport. I think a lot of people associate people like kids coming to sport as an athlete, but they're just a kid. And so we're really focusing on them as a kid before anything else. And that it comes in all different shapes, like how it manifests itself. You know, you think about like how many sports 10 years ago were wrestling with the idea of a girl wearing a hijab. It's like, why?
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, especially even like internationally and professionally also, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why? Why are we wrestling with this? If they want to, just let them play how they want to play. And so that, I think that founded our culture quite a long time ago. Of it, you could go onto a field and see people wearing everything and anything, and it didn't matter what you showed up. We gave everybody a jersey to feel like you were included and part of that. But beyond that, whatever you wanted to wear, you wear. And it didn't matter.
And that's very unique because I've seen in terms of some of the pictures and videos, I'm like, wow, yeah, this is amazing. It feels in terms of like everybody's included, everybody's welcome, you know, matter like walk of life or who you identify in or your beliefs, you know, it's very great establishing that platform, you know, where children can come and just be children and play sports and be included in the society, you know.
And it's worked well. Like as we've got more, I guess, growing, we've tried to think more about some of these intentional policies and procedures around stuff. And it's hard because a lot of it has happened organically and just naturally. And so you wrestle as you grow with like, okay, making policies and procedures around it. So it continues. It's already happening. So do you need to like lock it down with a policy and procedure? Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of that wrestling point we're in now of like defining these things. And do we need to define them because they're already happening? And by defining them, are we potentially going to stop them from happening? So that's kind of one of those challenges.
Yeah, and that's always like that's always a challenge in itself, you know, because when you talk about like things organically happening, right? And then, but if you start like creating maybe rules and laws around it, then maybe you find like people are pushing back or it's not anymore organically happening as it was happening, right?
Yeah. Well, a good example is like we have really been debating internally and looking externally for all kinds of support on at what age do we stop having girls and boys play together, or just saying everyone plays together. Gendered is a big challenge of picking two binary roles of female and male, but in conventional sport, at a certain age they split, and we don't do that. Everyone always plays together. But then we started having this internal debate of like, oh, is that the best way? Is that the most inclusive thing, particularly for girls? And so you start having those conversations of like, well, it seems to be happening organically. We've never had any girls complain about this space or be uncomfortable. And we have intentionally asked as well, like, are you comfortable here? Is this working for you? We've surveyed the heck out of everything. But that still doesn't mean that we're doing it right. So we've been trying to look at ourselves and look at what everyone else is doing and saying, okay, should we split at a certain age to create a bit more inclusive space? And ironically, all the research where we asked is like there wasn't a solid answer. There wasn't a streamlined, at this age you should do this, at that age you should do that. And it was actually more based on, which is kind of what we knew internally anyways, it was more based on grouping people in their comfort. So if you had a group of girls and boys who are really new to the sport or new to the activity, having them over here. If you had some people who was really strong, having them over here and giving them the space that suited their abilities and their comfort versus their gender.
Wow. So wow, that's it's very interesting. And then when you talk about in terms of whether it's gender issues or even like cultural issues or societal issues, right? But and then also, you know, we already also spoke, you highlighted a little bit in terms of languages issues also, and then also in terms of migrant. So I'm guessing also in your organization, you also caters or also like registration for migrant and refugees children?
Yeah, so our registration form has a question on it, like what's your primary language?
Mm.
And then we work, well, your language at home, and we work really hard to find people within our organization or within the community that can contact families in their primary language. The one that's actually emerged a lot this year that actually we don't have covered, and I have to go out and find someone to help with that, is there's lots of people who signed up this year who speak Tagalog. And
Mm.
that actually hasn't appeared before. It's been a strong, the main language in the past have been Arabic and English. And this year, Tagalog has appeared as a really big language. And we actually don't have anyone within our organization who speaks it.
Mm.
So that's one of the ones we have to go out and make sure that we have someone who can talk to parents and make sure that they feel comfortable, understand what's going on with the organization, and just make sure that they'll include it. And as you know, it really helps to have someone you identify with, whether
Mm-hmm.
that be in your language or in your how you identify. It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference that, you know, it's not just people that look like me running these
Mm-hmm.
organizations. And we put a huge value on that too, of making sure, if you look at our webpage, of making sure that our staff are
Mm-hmm.
representing the communities that we serve. And we work really hard to make that happen. And I think one of my deficits over the last year, frankly, of we flipped from a volunteer organization to a staff organization. It was really just scramble, 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 scramble to
Mm-hmm.
survive, frankly. And I think about what happened in that, when one of my deficits is I didn't put as much intentional focus on building leadership capacity in the people around me. And so this year, that's one of my huge focuses for me, is how do I, as a leader, make sure that the people around me are building themselves as leaders, not just the kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing, but also the people that work for us, and making sure that they feel supported to become a leader, whether it's with us, hopefully it's with us, or beyond us. And it applies all the way through the organization, from kid
Yeah.
to staff to board of directors. It has to go through the whole organization, or it's kind of meaningless. It's great to do it for the kids, 100%. Don't get me wrong, but it
Mm-hmm.
also has to apply to the staff. And that's kind of one of the big lessons
For
I've
sure.
had in the last year, is that
Yeah.
really have to put a
Mm-hmm.
strong focus on building the capacity
Yeah.
within the organization.
Okay. Cool. And yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, when you just not talking about like the people you're serving or the children, and also in terms of the organization and the people who are providing the service, who are helping the children, how it can also be equivalently like also apply and also work with
Yeah,
them. So and then because when we talk in terms of just ensuring children just have the opportunity to be children, or children have the opportunity just to go to school or to play,
yeah,
or to just, because there's this organization, a UN agency called UNICEF, which also advocates, the hashtag is like for every child, for every child the opportunity to be a child, for every child the opportunity to play. That, how do we ensure, whether it's here in Edmonton in Canada or around the world, like how do we ensure that kids have the opportunity to just be kids and not to be worried about other things?
that's a big question. It's and one of those ones I could go on for probably an hour about, but
Oh, yeah, it's
um,
a very big and rich question. Yeah, let's see how.
yeah, yeah. I think, like, I'm pausing, not for dramatic effect, but because I'm really like thinking about this question,
Mhm,
because
for
it means a
sure,
lot to
no
me.
problem.
And there's so many tiers to answer it from. Like, I'll start with like just a simple one. I think, like, speaking on the point I just made about um, the leaders within your own community, I think a lot of it starts with supporting and amplifying the voices of the people who are leading the charge already. Um,
Mm,
there's a lot of people who are doing this good work around the world, and it's hard. Right? And it's really hard.
mhm,
And there's so many. I'm starting to get emotional about it. There's so many external pressures that it's hard to describe. Of just like, I'll use me as an example. I can take it and I'm happy to take it. And I know it's my role to take it, but there's so many external pressures on me. And it seems so simple. Like, how do you get a kid on a field to kick a ball? Like it
Yeah.
seems simple.
Wow.
But with everything that's going on in the world right now, there's so many different pressures.
Mm.
And I think we have to be really intentional about reaching out to the people that we see leading these charges and making sure that they're okay,
Mm-hmm.
and doing what you can to keep lifting them up and keep supporting them. I'm not lifting them up in an artificial way to put them on a platform. I mean, lifting
For
them up in
sure.
terms of you have the power and the energy and the will and some spark inside of you that you keep falling down and learning and going again. You fall
Mm-hmm.
down, you learn, and you go again. You got to invest in those people,
For sure.
because those are the people that are going to change the world, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and we are so quick to shame some of those people who make mistakes rather than support them when they make a mistake, because they know the intention of these people is right. But their core, what they're trying to do is right. And how do we support them? So that's one, which is kind of nebulous, I understand, but I guess in some ways it's not, because we know who some of these people are out there. We can keep our eye out for the people who are emerging. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
count like yourself as someone who's coming into this realm in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we look at someone like yourself and say, okay, this is someone who's been there, walked the talk, has the education,
Mm-hmm.
and how do we make sure that they get supported into these positions
Mm-hmm.
of authority and of leadership?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's a big one, is creating those pathways for people to emerge into these positions of leadership that have lived experience,
Mm-hmm.
so they can recognize and understand what's going on, because that lived experience is so important.
Yeah.
And I can't speak to it in the same way that you can speak to it. I have my own personal life and the struggles that I've been through, but I'm also a 6'2", 190-pound white guy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
my lived experience is not the same as
Yeah.
your lived experience, or as a woman. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to really work hard to create these pathways for people with lived experience who have the passion, have the fire, have the burn to get into these positions where they can create that
Yeah.
change.
Oh.
And I think that if I could pick one thing, that would be it.
Okay, all right. Well, that's very amazing. Yeah, thank you very much. Because when you look at indeed whether it's here in Edmonton or across Canada or just around the world, there are indeed many people who are doing amazing work in terms of like supporting and caring for children in the community. Whether it's in terms of conflicts or it's thinking of and right now the pandemic as the challenges which you have also noted and alluded to. But and then when you look specifically here in Edmonton, like for the refugees and migrant children that the organization is supporting and catering, so like what has been the experience in terms of having that sense of belonging when you talk about in terms of being new to the country or trying to establish yourself or having a language challenges, like for elders, that is a challenge as it is, but for children who are coming as young children, like how is the organization like ensuring, they have that integration in the community or a sense of belonging in the community?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the main focuses of what we're doing, is making sure that everyone feels welcomed here and supported. And again, there's something miraculous about kicking a ball or shooting a ball or hitting a puck, or there's something about it that you like. It's hard to to say that's tangible, but there's something
Hmm.
about it when you get to be part of a group and everyone is accepted as part of that group. There's no tryouts, there's no all-star cast. There's just a group of people who are playing this thing together,
Hmm.
but it also is playing in a meaningful way. Sometimes I think one of the challenges is, like, I call it drop-in basketball syndrome, where there's just like an open gym and you can show up to play basketball.
Mm.
Okay, that's one thing, but there's no invitation. As one of my good friends Mark says, there's no invitation for you to be there and to play and be part of something. Free play is very much about the invitation. You have an invitation to come play.
Hmm.
You're welcomed here. And there are some tangibles that we're moving you towards. Because kids, no matter how everyone likes to structure it, there is a lot of value in the kids like getting to quote unquote compete. And it doesn't mean like I'm competing and keeping score, but just playing against each other. And like 1 week I play against you, and then 3 weeks later I play against you again. I'm like, oh, I get to play against Gerard again. You know what I mean? I played against him last time and he was really good. There's something inherent in that. Even if you're not keeping score, there's something inherent in that, like, oh, I get to play against that kid that I saw 3 weeks ago. And they keep coming back.
Yeah.
And I think that really applies to newcomers and refugees to our community. Is there is a concept of football is a great one. Everyone around the world understands this round ball and kicking it. We get it. Everyone gets it. And so why not use that as this tool of, okay, come kick the round ball with us and meet some other kids who've either come from other places like you, which is in a lot of the cases there are, or kids who've been born here and lived here forever. And it automatically creates that social inclusion piece. I'm not answering your question directly, I don't think, but we hear it. We survey the kids all the time. We do lots of interviews with kids from, you know, all the way from grade 3 to grade 12 of kids in the program. And one of the kids, I'll share one quick story. Hopefully he's not listening, but he'd be okay with me sharing it, but I won't use his name. But he talks a lot about how in his community, he came here as a refugee, and in his community, it's a really small community, and bad news travels really fast in a small community, especially a small ethnocultural community. Everybody knows each other. All of a sudden, one thing happens and everybody knows, right? And then all of a sudden, you're like that one person who's in the community who's done something wrong. And sometimes there's not the same space to make a mistake, especially as a newcomer, because you're coming to a new country and all of a sudden you make a mistake. So he's talked to us a lot about that ability to have somewhere else to make a mistake where everyone else doesn't know. Do you know what I mean? Like that safe space of like, you have your community that supports you and loves you. Don't get me wrong, 100% supports and loves. But you make there's this level of accountability over here in your own community, right? And that level of pressure, just like we all experience. And then over here, there's that same level of accountability and pressure, but there's not, you know that when you make a mistake, it's not going to like spread like wildfire to 2,000 people.
Wow. Yeah, that's indeed a very interesting point, because because as people, as human beings, we learn as we evolve, right? We learn through faulting, we learn through making mistakes here and there. So like having that in terms of a support system, whether you do wrong or right, that they will support you and show you or try to help you like grow in the right person that you can be yourself, or the right person that you are meant to be. So it's very good having those indeed establishment and support systems in place. I agree with you.
And what this young man will talk to you about too, is just, they say the things that I'm learning here, I take back to my community, which is exactly what we want. We're trying to build these leadership skills and capacity. So hopefully you use them with us a little bit, but that you take them back to your community. And so he kind of gets a safe space to test these things and then take them back to his community, right? Without having to test them in his own community where potentially he makes a mistake and then it spreads like wildfire again.
For sure.
Here's the chance to test it in a safe place, bring it back to your community and feel confident on what you're going to do.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. Then when we look at the organization in a whole, like how can regular people, like whether in the community, friends and family, how can they support or get involved or volunteer or contribute? Like what are the different ways that people in the community or elsewhere can support free play?
If you head to our website, you can quickly find different ways to donate. That's one simple way of making a monetary donation. If you have the means, we'd appreciate that. If you don't have the means, we're always looking for volunteer support. So there's a way to do that through the website. It's a little bit harder right now with all the COVID restrictions in place. So there aren't quite as many roles as there used to be, but there's still lots of roles. Finally, I would say we're aggressively trying to expand what we do. And as we expand what we do, we're looking for good people to bring on our staff. And we're looking for people who represent the community. Like we are really looking for the leaders in all the different communities out there to be part of what we're doing, so that we can support you, as I said in that little bit of a stump speech in a way, that we can support you to be a leader for your community and your kids. And if you want to be that person who is like got the fire and got the drive and you need a little bit of a launching pad, even if you're with us for a couple of years and we can launch you to somewhere else, or not we, but help you get to that spot.
Mm.
We want you to be here to be part of like the kind of us be a little bit of the incubator group for you.
Mm.
So I would say if you are a leader from your community and you have some of the backgrounds we're looking for, it doesn't have to be sport. We have two very distinct roles. We have a very sport heavy role with coaching, which again is coaching, but it's also real mentorship. And then we have one that's strictly mentorship, which is youth work. So we're looking for people with degrees in education, social work, youth work, early childhood education, and that sort of background to help as what we call a youth worker in the organization who delivers a lot of the social emotional health components. So yeah, I would say that's another really great one. Like there's a spot on the website that says jobs. We're constantly recruiting just because we want to keep good people coming through the door and we want to really put the best people we can in front of the kids. So if you're
yeah, thank you very much for sharing all those ways where people can involve and get, be part of this good organization and good change that is happening here in our community in terms of helping kids belong and integrate and just be part of the society. So is there any among this very richful and a great conversation which you've been having, like, is there anything that I forgot to ask or something that you would like to highlight as we conclude, as we bring this all pieces together?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you asked great questions, and I appreciate having the opportunity to share a little bit with your community. And I guess like my final note would just be that I think it would be helpful if we all had a little more patience with each other right now.
Wow.
Hard. It's really hard, but there's a lot of people trying to do a lot of good things, and having that patience to and that support to help those people do those things, and having that little bit of patience within your own circles. And one thing that we just implemented with our team is like we're trying to be really intentional about trying to just give everyone one piece of good news a day. So we have a rule where we are of you have to give one compliment a day to someone. It doesn't have to be on the staff. It could be anyone. Just give one compliment a day. And if you receive one compliment, you have to give two. Just that little bit of like goodwill in the universe, like maybe and make it intentional. It's not like just a blanket good job, but like a very intentional picking up on something. It could be so minor, so small. But picking up on one thing that someone did and being intentional about it and complimenting them for that. And if you receive one, to do two. If we could do that and see that spread a little bit, I think that would go a long way with the universe at the moment.
Oh, wow, that's very, it sounds like something small but very huge, because especially if you look at the times that we are in terms of the challenges, many people, whether it's financially, whether it's family, whether it's, the pandemic, really, we all could use people to be more patient with us. We all really need those kindness, like on a daily basis, and just somebody to specifically tell I'm here for you. Sometimes that makes a big difference. That's really go a long way in just helping you at least to feel better for the parts of the day, because there's already so much that is happening around you. So well, I really appreciate Tim for joining us on a GMA Talk for this week. Really, it's a very rich conversation, and really thank you for the work you do in the community. Thank you for the many lives of children you and your team and organization and partnership really that transform and inclusive and belonging and just being part of the society. Thank you very much for joining us this week, and and everybody else, thank you for tuning in on GMA Talk on this very, very great and richful a conversation on just for every child, a sense of belonging, for every child, a sense, a play opportunity. So until next time, please don't forget to subscribe and all the social media platforms. Stay tuned as we continue bringing you conversation on every weekly basis.